Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's Nlyte software webinar called Continuously Aware Data Center, our Technology Asset Management Asset Explorer for the Nlyte DCIM automation. My name is Mark Gatos. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Nlyte. I will be your host today. We want to thank you for the time you're going to be spending. Originally, the plan had been this was going to be internally just for our customers. It seems we have some non-customers out there, so welcome to you folks who are new to Nlyte. First off, again, I want to thank you for the time you're going to be spending. We had a very good year in 2018. We're adding customers at roughly a pace of about one a week. So some of them, the largest companies in the world, have been are now using Nlyte software. So we want to welcome all those new customers, and we also want to say thanks to the customers, some we've had for over a decade. So again, our purpose is to provide our customers value, and we continue to invest in our products. And today, we are fortunate to have a couple Nlyte folks speaking. Next slide, please. Who are going to be talking about our latest solutions in technology asset management and how they can provide more value to your DCIM implementation. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please submit them. We'll try to get to all those questions. We tend to run a pretty tight webinar. We move pretty quickly, so we've allocated 30 minutes for this webinar. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit them, and we will either get to them at the end of the webinar or we will get to you offline. So again, we're fortunate today to have Rob Neve, our co-founder and CTO, and Rodney Newton, who is our technology asset product manager. I am just going to turn it over to Rob. Take it away, Rob.
Thanks, Mark. If we can just go to the next slide, please, Rodney. Okay, so we're going to be talking around Asset Explorer with inside of the TAM technology, but I just want to talk a little bit before we get into that area around workload asset management, the Nlyte workload asset management portfolio, and a little bit of a reminder around the DCIM area, and then some understanding of the TAM area and how we're going to call on that to help automate DCIM, which is the real focus of what today's presentation is around. So if we look back on the DCIM side, which is the blue area on here, we've got the Nlyte Asset Optimizer, which for those that remember is everything. It's around your devices, your assets within inside racks, your racks themselves, your floor plans, the interconnectivities of those devices and their positions within the racks, as well as the racks on the floor and the capacity of those environments, right? Wrapped around inside Asset Optimizer is workflows, which helps drive change in the management of those racks and those data centers. Then we have like Nlyte Energy Optimizer, which is all around your telemetry. So this is your real-time power, your real-time temperatures, your events, your alarms being sent and associated to the Asset Optimizer. So joining that together gives you a true picture of exactly what's running inside your environment in a near real time for your alerts and alarms. Then we have Nlyte System Utilization Monitoring, which takes a step into the assets, looking at CPU utilization, so you could identify the assets that are not being fully utilized or that are overutilized within inside that data center environment. So DCIM in itself has a lot of information being built up inside it as a platform. So like I said, we've got the workflows, we've got the telemetry, we've got the moves, adds and changes that are happening inside that environment. We've got the interconnects between all these pieces and devices, and it is used to help drive optimization, forward capacity planning of our data centers, as well as a source or record of truth for other systems within inside an organization. So DCIM becomes a very dependent piece of running a data center, and the information in it really needs to be kept up to date. So if we look over to the TAM side of the world, the technology asset management side of the business, inside technology asset management, there is a component area called Asset Explorer, which is an agentless technology, and I'll be covering that a little bit more. And that's really the focus of today's demonstration, looking at Asset Explorer with inside or TAM Asset Explorer and looking at how we can pull on that to help automate many of the functions or areas within inside DCIM. What I won't be covering today, but there is more information on our website around, which is Application Tracker, which looks at utilization of software at a desktop level. or software asset management, which is all around your licensing, your license attributations, what licenses are in use, what's available within inside your organization. Again, both of those I won't be covering today. I really want to focus on Asset Explorer and using that for the automation and optimization really of the DCIM platform. Machine learning, everything that we're going to be covering today, the information we have in there and the information that's being captured inside the system is being made available for our hosted machine learning, which is IBM Watson, so that we can feed that information in and we can take this automation to the next level, really, to start really getting in front of challenges or future challenges within inside our environment and help with the decision making within inside the data center. So if we can go through to the next slide, please, Rodney. Okay, so focusing on Asset Explorer. So as I said, Asset Explorer is an agentless technology that will find hardware and software information and pretty much everything around anything it hits on the network. But what does agentless mean? What it means is you don't have to install an agent on any of the target's devices. You don't have to enable any agents on any target devices. It's completely agentless. It will hit the network, you'll put in your subnets into domains, and off it will go, and it will hit a device, audit a device, capture all the information, and bring that back home in the file system. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. And then it's stored inside the system so that it can be used for presentation of deeper understanding of exactly what's on our network. It's very lightweight, so it really, you're going to hardly know it's running on the network as it's doing its process, as it's collecting its information. It pulls information together in relation to IT and the business. So inside the application itself, inside Asset Explorer, you can build a business understanding in there, and it can join and group information together. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the architecture side of things. We're focusing today's demonstration, today's talk around automation of DCIM. It doesn't have to just focus on DCIM. It can spread outside of the data center landscape and hit the desktop world. So it can also find information around what's happening on the desktops. It also does IoT devices. So basically anything that's on that network, as soon as it finds something on the network, it will connect to it, understand it, start auditing it and collecting information around it. So it really does give you a good understanding of what's going on your network, what's connected on there. And when it does its discovery, when it finds that information, it actually builds a line or baseline of that information and says, right, this is everything I found, when I found it, what the state was and what the information is about those devices, and build a record or baseline. The next time it runs another scan, it goes through and it says, well, what's changed? And it captures a new line of understanding around what's on the network and around those devices. So it gives you a comparison baseline, and it's constantly up to date or self-aware of what's going on inside your environment. So it really helps with the risk mitigation and from an audit point of view of understanding what's out there, what's under management, what was there today, and what was there yesterday. So the connectors, it has a connection capability. So today we're looking at Asset Explorer, TAM Asset Explorer connected to DCIM for DCIM automation. And it is really, and as you'll see we go in, it really is the drive around automation of DCIM. So that connector, I'll be covering that. What I won't be covering today, but it does have connections into, which is ServiceNow CMDB. So it can talk directly to the ServiceNow CMDB, populate the CIs, create the CIs, and give the CMDB a good understanding of whatever's on the network. So this is more than just data centers. It can focus whatever it's capturing and pass that into the CMDB. Then I won't be covering as well the Microsoft SCCM connector, which basically, as it's crawling across the network, will look at the device and see if it's a Windows device, and it'll be able to understand, is SCCM enabled on this device, or is SCCM up to date on the device? So I won't be going into that, but both of those, the CMDB and the SCCM, if you want more information, there's a raft of it on our website. So if we go through to the next slide, please, Rodney. So this slide, it is a little bit sarcastic, but it's pretty much, these are the challenges and the complexities of running and managing and looking after a DCIM system. And as many of you will know, we've really pushed around trying to help and simplify the management of the DCIM system. We've built the workflow system in there. We have the goods receiving. We have the audit modules. We have all these modules and connections to really help keep that record of truth up to date. But you know, there's a lot of change that happens inside the data center. There's a lot of change that happens through our processes, through planned, through actions and everything else. And all of that change, you know, we're driving to make sure that we make sure the DCIM system is up to date so that we can do our capacity management, so we can forecast and plan for change. But there are times when change happens inside our environment that's outside of the process. It just happens. We need to install these boxes really quick, or we need to add new memory modules, or we need to add new CPUs, or we need to add this new software. So these changes that happen outside a process, some are legitimate, they should happen, you know, it's an emergency, we needed to do it, but sometimes there are changes that are happening that shouldn't have happened. And those are the changes that we sometimes read or hear on the web where there's been an impact to the data center. So by connecting Asset Explorer to DCIM, we're helping build that base record, and we're helping to keep that system up to date and identify those changes that fall outside a process. Next one really is DCIM gives you all the assets, and like I said, you've got all of your connections and everything else within inside your environment. But what we're doing with asset automation is we're really trying to bring over and help automate the connections and understanding of the network. So how does the network all fit together? Is the network infrastructure information up to date with inside our DCIM? And we're going to be really driving that forward, because to understand how many more available ports I have, what's connected to what, is a real core part of the DCIM platform, which I know I hear from many customers that they struggle to keep up to date. Anytime something changes on the network, or anytime anything is added, being able to understand and capture that within inside the DCIM world by having Asset Explorer out there constantly aware, it really helps to bring that information together. And inside the data center, I know that there's a lot more than just Linux running, right? You've got Windows, you've got all sorts of operating systems that are sitting out there. And keeping that up to date with inside DCIM and understanding what is running on our boxes and what applications are actually on those devices, by connecting into Asset Explorer, we get a near real-time understanding of that information, and we can either populate DCIM or we can click through and see a little bit more inside Asset Explorer. Audits, obviously, like I said earlier, we've got the audit module and the goods receiving, but by having an Asset Explorer connected, it can identify and update much of the attributes, or many of the attributes that are inside the DCIM platform, and help automate that process. So it really does help make the data center self-aware. So if we go through to the next slide, please, Rodney. So the continuously aware data center is where we're pushing and what we're aiming to do here. I've got by the numbers. What we see today and what we're going through today is available in the release today. Our mission as we go forward is to continually add this automation piece. We really want to drive automation with inside DCIM, make it easy for people, or easier for people, to manage their environments and keep up to date for that source or record of truth. So Asset Explorer will go out, run across the network as it finds it, a device. It will update that device. If that device doesn't exist, it will create that device, and it will give you an area where you can see and understand and deal with those things that fall outside the process. It will read and populate and validate the values that are in the fields within inside the DCIM system. So inside Nlyte, it will be going through and making sure those records have the right information. You're going to see some of that in the demonstration today. If you want more information, so if you want a little bit more than what's captured in DCIM, you're one click away and you're going to be able to find all of that information within inside Asset Explorer. For your chassis and your slots and your module management of your blades within inside your environment, Asset Explorer connects, reads, understands the chassis, understands the slots within inside a chassis, understands the blades and the available slots. So it really gives us a good understanding of what's going on there and helps with the ongoing management and keeping that up to date. This one, point number 5, this is the start of us pushing and creating and trying to automate the management of networks inside DCIM. So Asset Explorer will find a device. As it finds that device, part of its process is it will find the sub-assets or network cards within that device, and it will understand the ports and availability of those network cards. It will create those network cards or make sure that DCIM has those network cards within inside itself. So it'll help support the understanding of network connectivity and driving the trace within inside Nlyte and its DCIM solution. From a security aspect and understanding and really locking down the environment, it will be constantly going across your network, making sure DCIM is up to date, highlighting areas or assets that have changed maybe outside a process, highlighting assets that maybe are not recognized in your world. So it'll help identify security risks or concerns that are happening inside your environment. It's a real-time event-driven updating system, so I'll cover some of that in the architecture. And the last point really is, this will help reduce the ongoing maintenance or looking after the data or information within inside DCIM from an ongoing point of view, but it will also help when you're deploying and standing up new environments. So it'll enable you to capture and enrich the data at point of when you're bringing on, say, a new room or a new area or an edge environment. It will help bring that data into DCIM so you're there and you're connected to that those data centers or those smaller sub data centers. So the real focus, and you're going to hear us talk more and more about this, this is us really pushing this now, which is the continuously aware data center through TAM Asset Explorer and helping to automate that process. So if we go through to the next slide, please, Rodney. So how does it all work? So how do the two solutions work, and how do we bring it together? So Asset Explorer basically has a scanning technology. Like I said, it's an agentless scanning technology. There's nothing to enable, nothing to install on a target device. Basically, it scans. As it scans, part of its auditing process, so it hits a device, it captures everything it can. It creates what's called a scan file, which is an audited file of everything that is documented. It then passes that scan file over to the AI within inside the system, the BLT, and the AI looks at the file that's been sent, understands the organization of that information, and then sorts that data so it can be interpreted within inside the database. So it puts it in the configuration management database so that we can look back on it, and then as it's doing more and more scans, it can see and capture what's changed. But at the same time, the BLT is pushing over an event. So that event gets pushed over to the DCIM reconciliation engine, and the reconciliation engine and the APIs, and then it identifies the assets within inside Nlyte DCIM, enriches those assets or creates those assets or updates anything that needs to be captured or any anomalies and pushes those into BDM. And you'll see that today with the assets to be resolved sheets and stuff. But basically, it collects, sorts, and pushes and automates DCIM, and that's the goal here, right? Is to really automate the properties or values within inside DCIM. Transactional updates, as it's finding this, as it finds an asset, as it finds new information, that's when it's pushing it over. It's not doing it in batches, not doing it in big lumps. It's doing it as it finds it. It supports all major protocols, including its own protocol. So it has all the major protocols out there. So it's a lot more than just SNMP. I know we'll see out there, there's a number of solutions out there that basically scream about SNMP. Well, yes, it does all the SNMP, but it does a whole raft of other protocols so it can audit and understand a device. And like I say, it's got its own proprietary. We have a weighted score. We have some fuzzy logic, and you're going to see a little bit of that today in the demonstration, which deals with the management of information. So if anyone's out there has ever taken a discovery solution type technology information and tried to reconcile it against an inventory system, we have all that fuzzy logic done. So it has the weighted scores that you can set up. But basically, once you've set up this technology and you've got it running, you just set it and forget it, and it keeps DCIM up to date. And if you want more information, you click one click and you're there reviewing more information about the assets and everything else. So it will find all of the assets, it will find the network cards, build up the network connections, it will document and find the OS, it will update the DCIM solution with the operating systems that are there on those devices. It'll understand if something's active, it'll help automate and drive workflow. So it'll help really as things are installed. If you have tasks or activities or assets out there that are in a planned state, it will help update those to active operational as it finds them. So really, it's making the self-aware data center through the help and support of TAM Asset Explorer to really push that information into DCIM. And like I say, you're going to see this in today's demonstration, but the drive going forward now is real automation around how can we automate as much as we can within the DCIM environment using this technology. So with that, we can head it. There we go. You ready, Rodney? So Rodney's going to take us through a demonstration of the system and show us how it kind of all works from the Asset Explorer side, pulling that data into DCIM.
Thanks, Rob. I'm Rodney Newton, Product Manager here at Nlyte, and today I'm going to show you at a high level how using TAM Asset Explorer for DCIM will automate your infrastructure by finding assets and updating or creating them in Nlyte Asset Optimizer, known as NAIA. As Rob mentioned, this is a set it and forget it solution. So once in place, TAM Asset Explorer for DCIM will automatically keep your system up to date. So first, I'll simulate a scan in which a new asset is discovered. TAM Asset Explorer will pick up the new asset, process it using our business logic technology, and then create the new asset in NAIA. Next, I'll update that asset in TAM Asset Explorer, and we'll see that change in NAIA. So with that, let's dive in here and take a look. So logging into NAIA. And the first thing I want to do here is search for the server that we're going to discover. And I just want to do this to kind of show that it doesn't already exist in Nlyte. So here you can see there's no assets that start with MSB. And I'm going to switch to the back end here on the server. Like I said, I'm just going to simulate a scan. So this will just take a few moments to process. The business logic technology will process that scan. And in the meantime, I can kind of switch back to NAIA and take a look at the admin screen here and show you some of the options and configurations that are available. So here on the admin screen, we have the configuration tab and the discover module. We have automatic creation enabled and automatic mapping enabled. So here with automatic creation, if you wanted to disable that, what you can do is kind of queue up all of those assets in the assets to resolve sheet in the BDM tool, which I'll show you in a bit. And that allows your security folks to kind of review assets before adding them into NAIA. But for this demo, we're going to have it automatically add them. And then automatic mapping is enabled because we want any assets that are discovered that are existing assets in NAIA, we want them to automatically be mapped using that fuzzy logic, which we can show you here. Under the customization tab here, we have discovery mapping. So again, this is the scoring and the fuzzy logic that Rob referred to earlier. And this just allows you to set your scoring for all of the different properties, and we're just taking all of the defaults today. So let's switch back to the server. Okay, so yep, that's been processed. So we're good here. And now if we come back to NAIA and search for that server, here we go. So now you see we have MS server 02. And if I select it here, we can have a look at the data. Oops. Sorry. We can have a look at the data that has come through here. So first up top here, notice that the state is set to active and operational. Since it was discovered on the network here, this is an active box. You can see a lot of the information that was brought over here. We have the serial number from the device. You can see the date and time and who modified it here. So you can see that it was added today, and it's been modified by Darren Green. In this case, I'm using Darren Green's account, but normally you'd have the integration set up with like a service account. Next, you can see that we've captured the OS from the scan. And then if I go down here to the card connections here, you see that the cards have been found and set up all within NAO. Now on the right-hand side, you see these tiles that we have here. So we've got the material for the server, as well as we picked up the location from the scan file. And we've also got the IP address. So now we know that the IP address on this record matches with what the actual server in the data center is using. So you can see there's a lot of automation happening here behind the scenes. Now, to see more information, I can access this asset in TAM Asset Explorer with just a couple of clicks. Here we have a wealth of rich data that gives us all the details of what's going on inside the device, things on the device, firmware, network cards, memory. Everything about the device that was captured as part of the discovery audit process is now available for me to drill into deeper, or to use for reporting, or just to get a general understanding of kind of what's going on. And several of these components can be drilled into even deeper to reveal more information. So that's how a new asset is handled. Next, let's do an update to an asset and see that information in NAO. So I'm just going to log into Asset Explorer. I'm going to do an edit here, select our server. And I'm just going to pick a field here to do an update on. We'll change status from new to retired spare parts. Do an update. So this is saving it to TAM Asset Explorer, as well as through the integration over to NAO. So this will just take a moment here. Okay, great. So that's saved. Now, if I switch back over to NAO, I want to highlight here that we have active operational, but below that we have a substatus menu that is blank right now. So once I do a refresh, now we've seen that update. So we get that information from Asset Explorer. The other thing that I want to show, Rob kind of mentioned it, is within the BDM tool, how we have the assets to resolve sheet. So remember, I kind of showed about the automatic creation. I just want to highlight here that for all the security folks that don't like the idea of assets automatically added to NAO, we have that option to disable automatic creation, which will force all newly discovered assets to sit in a queue in the Assets to Resolve tab. So this will allow someone to review each asset before adding them to NAO. As you saw earlier, the architecture, as this data is pushed across to the NAO logic, part of the process captures assets to resolve. These are all the assets that were found on the network that don't exist within DCIM. This enables security to identify things that were added outside of the normal process or breaches to the ITSM process. So in this demo, I've shown a new asset and an update. In this case, we were able to show a server, but TAM Asset Explorer can discover all your connected assets, network switches, routers, IoT devices, etc. And this concludes the demo portion of our presentation. I think we may have some time for some questions.
All right, thank you, Rodney. We got, to tell you the truth, there's no way we're going to get to all the questions online here. We appreciate it. If you folks have additional questions, feel free to submit them. We're going to try and take maybe the first three here. but we assure you we'll take care of all the questions offline. So thanks for all the questions. Additionally, for those that were asking, we will be sending out a link to the recording of this webinar if you want more, if you want to re-listen or you want to pass it on to anyone else in your organization. So let me first take the first question here, which is from Vanessa. Was this software developed by Nlyte? Completely fair question. Rob, did you want to take that?
Yeah, no. We basically, we acquired the technology. So we asked Gartner to give us a list of some software that was out there, or some companies that are out there that had a technology, because that could support what we were looking for around the automation side and around the TAM area business. So they gave us a list, a cool vendor, which this one was identified as a cool vendor or cool technology. They've been going for over 5 years. So yeah, we acquired their technology.
Okay, great. Yeah, and so it's been around for a while and been developed for a while, and we're fortunate to have that technology be part of Nlyte's solution. The next question is from Barry. We have an existing discovery system. How do you compare to other systems?
The difference between Asset Explorer or TAM Asset Explorer and the way that it discovers, it finds a lot of information. It uses a mixture of protocols. It's a lot lower cost in its ownership or overall ownership of in the way that it works and what it costs to actually use the system. And also, as far as I can tell at the moment, and I'm pretty positive on this, it is the only discovery technology in the world that has been linked to Nlyte for DCIM automation and is on a path to drive DCIM automation. So you get the benefit of it doing all of its normal discovery technology stuff and information gathering for inside the data center and outside the data center, but it's the only technology that I'm aware of that is fully taking it to this level of DCIM automation.
Yeah, and just sort of jump in there and to summarize, really when you get down to it, the technology is very new and sort of the next generation of discovery technology, and it finds more assets and more information about those assets than comparable solutions, and has a much lower total cost of ownership. We really don't have time to sort of drill down into both of these, of course, which is the devil is in the details, but that's the gist. The last question, you sort of just touched on it, and this question we should always sort of just address because it comes up in most webinars, is the question is from John: how much does it cost?
Right, so if you're already a DCIM customer and you add Asset Explorer, the connection from Asset Explorer to Automate DCIM is free. So it's completely free, the connection piece. Asset Explorer obviously is asset-based licensing, so there is a license piece there and is a separate module. The ServiceNow and then the SCCM capabilities, they're add-on modules that you would add to Asset Explorer. So they're slightly different. But for DCIM, it's if you've got DCIM, you get Asset Explorer. That push that you've seen and everything you've seen around automation today, that's completely free.
All right. We are 3 minutes over the time for the webinar. So again, for everybody that submitted your questions, we didn't get to them. We will get back to you individually. Again, thanks for your time in the webinar. Again, we will be sending out a link to the recording. I'd like to thank Rob Neve and Rodney Newton for participating in the webinar today. I want to thank all of you, and thanks for being customers. We exist to serve you and provide value to your organization. So we look forward to continuing to do that. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on our next webinar.